In this lecture, I'm going to discuss performance reviews. Now, there are informal and formal performance reviews, and managers sometimes they avoid doing the informal performance reviews. Informal performance reviews are very useful. They can be something as simple as, I think you're doing an outstanding job. Some managers, they're a little bit quiet when it comes to informal performance reviews, and they don't think they're needed. However, it's really not the case. Many employees, they happen to be a little bit self-conscious, especially if they're new. They don't know where they stand in the eyes of management, and they could use some feedback. Suppose a manager offers a good opinion to an employee. Now, wouldn't that give that opinion some peace of mind that they're doing okay? And then allow them to be more comfortable and then to work more effectively to produce things for that organization. In fact, the productivity of many employees would be enhanced with just a bit more communication with their managers. Now, obviously, it's also necessary to do formal performance reviews, and many managers do this. And the reason we do this is, well, a principal one that's very obvious is sometimes you need to let an employee go. And in that instance, it's actually helpful to have documented performance records over time, which you can then use to justify letting an employee go. And this prevents the organization from being liable in the event that the employee chooses to take legal action. Now let's talk a little bit about the review process. The review process has some positives, but it also has some negatives. And one of the main problems with the review process is how it makes people feel. For many workers, it's very unpleasant. This is because the review process, it's confrontational. It places the managers against the workers. And the managers, well, they make judgments and they're on the offensive. And the workers, well, they're on the opposite side. They're on the defensive. Now you can imagine if the performance review were to include information such as contributions that a person would make throughout the year and their accomplishments, this confrontation would be reduced. And this type of discussion, it would motivate the workers, and likely after the review, the workers would go on to perform a lot better. So keep in mind too, when you're in a confrontational situation, mention the accomplishments and focus on the achievements. Another useful tactic is to make sure that the performance review maintains its accuracy of the portrayal of the performance. Because sometimes, as we've seen, when it comes to judgments, there's biases that are introduced. For example, sometimes an employee will rate himself or herself at a much lower level than what a manager would rate them at. Or it can be the opposite case, where the employee rates themselves very strong in an area which they may be deficient in or weak in. Again, the main goal of the performance review is to obtain an accurate assessment of performance. And then that will be used as a platform to help achieve better performance down the road. And after assessing performance, there needs to be a discussion, not simply about all the problems that may have happened in the past, but about actions that will need to be taken to improve performance from that point on. One interesting problem that can occur during performance review, it has to do with how managers rate performance of employees. Some managers, they rate the performance of all employees within a range that is limited, perhaps say from average to excellent. Now, why would these managers avoid the lower part of the range? Well, it may be the case that the manager doesn't want to enter a conflict situation with the employees about an unacceptable performance level. Such a manager may think it's easier to just accept things the way they are and just move on. This is a little bit problematic because that employee may then think that things are fine the way they are. In addition, what would happen if that employee were to go back to work and then to tell the other colleagues that their performance was great? The other colleagues would probably feel that if a poor performer is being rated as good or at an excellent level, then this may reduce their own performance efforts and render their own efforts insignificant. And that's going to reduce the colleague morale and potentially their performance as well. So getting back to the whole laying off workers, a manager can actually use a performance review to lay off. But if everyone has received acceptable performance reviews, they can't do this. If everyone is the same, there's no way to select the person to lay off. So if one person is chosen and laid off without proper formal justification, then the company could be held liable for favoritism. In short, a well thought out performance review will improve employee performance and therefore company performance. As for poorly thought out reviews, these will be kind of demoralizing to the employee, and they can also affect the performance of the colleagues.